Okay, starting Oedipus the King. I hope you've definitely read the introduction. It's packed with a lot of information, and we don't have time in a single lecture to really look at everything that's in the introduction, as well as going over the play. So I'm not going to really say much about the introduction, other than to just point out a couple of things, or to point out a couple of points that Knox makes in it. And one of those is the question, the conundrum, the dilemma, however you want to put it, of human freedom, free will, versus and fate, determinism, however you want to put it, in meaning. And by meaning, I mean, can there be real meaning to human life if, for example, if we don't have free will, if we are not free to, quote unquote, choose our fate, to choose our destiny, okay? So that's an issue that Knox really addresses quite lengthily, beginning with I think it's somewhere around, no, not 135. 143. He's kind of addressed it a little bit earlier, but it's really on 143 where he emphasizes it, because he's talking about the notion that Aristotle discusses in his book Poetics, of peripeteia, which is the reversal that a tragic hero undergoes, reversal of fortune, that the tragic hero undergoes as a result of usually the recognition of his or her error, the mistake that he or she has made that results in the fall that they experience. In middle of that page, he says the reversal of the tragic hero is singled out for praise by Aristotle because it comes about through recognition. Okay, and what that means is it comes about because the tragic hero recognizes something about his or her identity or something about his or her actions that has caused whatever the tragedy is to occur. And I think the case can be made that in Antigone, you don't see that reversal, you don't see that recognition until just before her death, really, when she makes that claim when she is in the cave, or just before she goes into the cave. Just 1 second, see if I can find it real quickly. Where she says, this is lines 10, 13 or so. What law of the mighty gods have I transgressed? Why look to the heavens anymore? Just think my reverence only brands me for irreverence. Very well, if this is the pleasure of the gods. Once I suffer, I will know that I was wrong. She seems to be indicating there maybe the decision she made was not the right decision, okay? Back to the introduction on Oedipus, where he brings up at the end of that middle paragraph, 143, this does pose for the modern reader as for the ancient spectator the question of fate and though those spectators could not have expressed the idea in abstract terms of free will and human freedom. And he goes on and talks about, that idea for several pages. And he talks about it within both secular and Christian terms. And he draws a kind of a distinction saying, bottom of 145, there are two obvious ways of avoiding the contradiction, both of them extreme positions and at opposite poles. And he says, one is the Christian position where all of history is providential, that is, God's in control, everything's working out according to God's plan, blah, 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 blah. Okay? He says, if that's the position one accepts, then it totally does away with human freedom, human free will. Okay? I think he's wrong about that, by the way, and we'll talk about that. Or he says the other position is all we have is human freedom, all we have is free will, and he says, I'm quoting page 146, the middle paragraph, second line, to the devil with pattern and order, this party, that is the total human freedom and free will, is for anarchy. The human will is absolutely free and nothing is predictable. There is no pattern of order in the universe, which is merely the operation of blind chance. This would be the modern materialistic perspective of, the universe exists because of time, chance, and matter. That's it. Because somewhere between 15.1 and 14.3 billion years ago, something blew up, the Big Bang, and it caused a series of events that are still occurring, and we're merely at 14.3 to 15.1 billion years after that initial explosion. And everything that happens, it's totally random, totally chance, okay? And he kind of says, if you accept this, then you accept a blind, pointless, meaningless universe, the universe of the absurd. And if you need kind of an example of these two opposing ideas, if you've ever seen the film Signs with Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix, Mel Gibson plays an Episcopal priest who's hung up his collar because of events that happened in the past, and Joaquin Phoenix is his younger brother Merrill. Well, the movie's about an alien invasion, and there's a scene where they're watching the television, and Merrill asks his brother, older brother, who, remember, was a priest. He said, help me to understand this. How can all this be happening? And Mel Gibson's character says, Merrill, there's two ways of looking at the world. He says, one way is everything that occurs for a reason, and everything that occurs has a meaning behind it, because ultimately there is a pattern and an order, and essentially there is a patterner and an orderer behind it all. Okay, so that's on one side. He said on the other side is the idea that it doesn't make any sense, that there is no pattern, there is no order, there is no meaning for anything that happens. Okay, everything is blind chance. And Merrill's like, okay, I get that. And he goes, I'm definitely on the first side. I think everything's got to have a reason. I think there's got to be meaning for why this is happening. While they're watching the TV and they're watching the aliens, land in various cities around the country, around the world. And Mel Gibson's character, whose name I can't remember, goes, good. So Merrill, Joaquin Phoenix's character, asks his older brother, Which one do you believe? Keep in mind, he's a priest, or he was a priest. And Mel Gibson's character just kind of looks at him and says, Meryl, do you feel better? Are you comforted? He says, yeah, I feel a lot better. So what does it matter what I think? Okay. Why is that so important, and why does that fit here? Well, it turns out we learn at the end of towards the end of the film, the reason he's hung up his collar as a priest is because his wife was killed by a drunk driver years before, a few years before, not, decades or anything like that. And he was the first one on the crash scene. And as she was dying, literally as she was dying, her last words, he was trying to console her. He was trying to hold her. He needed something from her, like, I love you, live on, blah, blah, blah. Her last words to him were, swing, Meryl, swing. And a doctor explained that was just the synapses in her brain firing the last few shots, as it were. Totally random, totally incoherent, totally meaningless. Okay? And he was like, at that point, oh, crap. There can't be a God. A good God would not allow this to happen. A providential God would not allow this to happen. Okay? Well, and I'm not going to give away the film in case you haven't seen it, but I'll just say that those words, swing, Meryl, swing, turn out to be very, very important at the end of the film. In other words, what M. Night Shyamalan, or however you pronounce his name, is suggesting there is meaning, there is order, there is a pattern, but what must always happen in order for one to take meaning? Well, you have to see the order. You have to see the pattern. You have to be able to perceive it. And interestingly enough, there's a study that just came out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago maybe, that argued people who have this kind of intuitive knowledge, who can see, who can perceive patterns because of their intuition, essentially, tend to be the people who have more belief in God, in the supernatural, okay? I can't remember the exact, let's see if I can pull it up real quickly. The exact point that the people were making, there it is. It's from the Georgetown University Medical Center, published September 9th, 2020. And here's the little blurb. Individuals who can unconsciously predict complex patterns, an ability called implicit pattern learning, are likely to hold stronger beliefs that there is a God who creates patterns of events in the universe, according to neuroscientists. Okay? Spanned group of people in the United States and in Afghanistan. So it wasn't, just all these Western people, et cetera, et cetera. And the observation is, it uses this well-established cognitive test, and it says the people who do best on this cognitive test in seeing these patterns are also people who more likely believe in God, et cetera, okay? So, one of the things that Knox is saying, again, bottom of page 146 in the introduction, is he says, Insofar as any meaningful pattern or divine providence exists, it must encroach to some extent on human freedom. If human freedom is unlimited, the possibility of pattern or order is denied. Okay, well, the question there, or everything in that statement, hinges on that word unlimited. Unlimited. Which it's a false choice. That is, it's a I can't think of the phrase, false dichotomy or something like that. Because we know human freedom is not limited. We are not unlimited individuals. If by human freedom you mean my ability to choose to do whatever I want to do, well, I can attempt to choose to do. Whether I'm able to do that or not, that's not even a question, right? Because I'm not free to do an awful lot of things because of physical limitations. I'm not free to think a lot of things because of intellectual limitations. All right? So to suggest that human freedom is unlimited in one sense is silly. And we're going to see in just a moment, because I'm going to put up a thing from screen sharing. And this is going to tie to a reading we're going to do later in the semester. Divine order, divine providence, whatever you want to call it, and human freedom aren't necessarily in complete contradiction. There's this principle based upon an old Greek word, and the Greek word is synergy, S-Y-N-E-R-G-Y, which you hear a lot today. It's a big buzzword in businesses and government. If we work in synergy, blah, blah, blah. Well, synergy means syn, the S-Y-N, means together or with, alongside, in conjunction with, and the ergi is energy or action. So it's this idea of working alongside something / somebody else. Well, in the early Christian church, and then later in the Middle Ages, what this notion tends to mean is that you've got two levels of action, okay? This lower level, this is the human realm, all right? This up here, this is the quote unquote supernatural realm or the heavenly realm. And that things are happening up here and things are happening up here. And those down here, humans, are totally unaware of what's going on up here. But those up here are totally aware of what's going on down here. So the idea is that God is acting up here, let's say, and we're acting down here, and we are oblivious to what God is doing, but God's not oblivious to what we are doing, right? And that the two are acting in tandem, like hand in glove, right? So let me put something on the screen to give kind of a visual representation of this. We're going to read about Boethius in a few weeks. We're going to read Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. And I don't want to get into this too much since we'll do that later. So the diagram that I have here is essentially based on Boethius. Up here in the right-hand corner, this is kind of the Greek perspective, the ancient Greek, pagan Greek perspective of things, where you have the fates or fate and the gods. And notice fate is not behind the gods and the gods are not behind fate, meaning fate is not greater than the gods and the gods are not greater than fate, okay? But the gods can see fate. The gods know what fate will do down here on earth. So the gods can speak through oracles, as we saw in the Humanities and the libation bearers. Zeus can speak to Apollo, who can then speak to the oracle, and the oracle can speak to humanity, and you've got your marching orders, so to speak. Well, Zeus can do that not because Zeus is pulling the strings, but it's because Zeus knows what fate has in store. See, in this idea, in this perspective, fate is calling the shots on humanity. Yeah, the gods can intervene also, but fate essentially is calling the shots, and humanity really has little or no choice. The plays we've read so far kind of make that clear, okay? The Boethium view is different. Down here at the bottom, the dashed line, this is, birth and death. So somebody is born, somebody dies. As we go through life, how do we experience it? Well, think of these as seconds or minutes or hours or days or months, etc. We experience it chronologically, linearly, right? Moment by moment, day by day, etc. But as we experience it, what do we go through? All kinds of crud. I mean, look at just the year 2020. Justice Ginsburg died yesterday, and I said to somebody, my wife or one of my kids or something, what else is this year going to throw at us? I mean, I've got friends who still live in California, and I feel like telling them, if I were you, I think I'd move away from the San Andreas Fault, because who knows what's going to happen this year. I mean, we've got hurricanes, okay, whatever. So we experience down here, the valleys and the mountains of human experience. But we don't get a larger picture, right? We often get, something bad happens and we sit there and we're like, why? Why is this happening? What is going on? Because we don't see the quote unquote big picture. Well, Boethius described this whole thing as, from God's perspective, it's the big picture. Okay, so here's God. He's up outside of time. That's what eternal means. He is out of eternal time. He's outside of time, but he sees everything in time. How? Well, if take the birth and death from as the beginning of time to the end of time, from God's perspective, they're all occurring how? Now. It's all the eternal now, or the eternal present. Everything within time is immediate for God. So he sees everything from the beginning to the end. That's why, St. Paul could say, from before the foundations of the world, Christ was crucified. Because from God's perspective, even before the world was created, because he sees everything in time, that is, everything that is in time within the world, he sees it all in one. It's hard to talk about it because we can only talk about things in relation to time. He sees it in one moment, but it's not a moment for him. It's all he sees, so to speak, okay? Well, that's Boethius's idea, right? And in that, here's Earth, so everything that happens on here. Fortune is essentially a goddess, a power that works on Earth. Fate stands kind of behind fortune, can kind of turn fortune's wheel. We'll talk about that later. But behind all of that is God. That's why you can have the language of the language, used throughout the Bible of God's foreknowledge. Well, that means knowledge before. See, what so many have gotten hung up on is that implies that things happened, so to speak, already. Well, no, because as we experience things down here, they haven't happened already. But if you were looking down into this from outside of time, all of time is a snapshot. All right, so that's kind of the Boethian way of looking at it. One other comment about the introduction. He talks about Oedipus and whether or not Oedipus deserves what happens to him. Okay, In page 151, he says at the top of the page, critics have tried with contradictory results to find some flaw in Oedipus's character that will justify his reversal. Now, the flaw there that he's talking about is that word that I've used before, amartia, Hamartia, that Aristotle talks about every tragic hero must have. Okay? It often gets translated as the fatal flaw of the tragic hero. And that often gets, that often gets interpreted as some moral deficiency, some character flaw in the tragic hero that causes the bad things to happen, right? So notice what Knox is saying there. Critics have tried with contradictory results and such. Well, he essentially says Oedipus doesn't have any of this kind of flaw, so to speak. I'm going to disagree, okay? We're gonna see Oedipus do some things, and if you remember from Antigone, the leader of the chorus, and Creon, both make comments about how Antigone is just like her father, and they describe them both as being rash and stubborn and immovable and implacable and impetuous. So you got, kind of two qualities there, rashness and stubbornness, okay? Okay, so just keep those in mind. So let's jump in. I'm not going to touch about the whole Oedipus complex, all the Freudian stuff, because in my opinion, that's all a bunch of nonsense, especially given, that Freud essentially weaves this theory that so dominated the 20th century out of about 3 lines, literally 3 lines of this play, which we'll talk about when we get to it, okay? So, bear in mind, this play is written and performed about 11 or 12 years after Antigone, okay? But the original audience is thoroughly familiar with the story already because it's part of essentially their national myth, right? So even when Antigone was done, they already knew the stories of Antigone and Polynices and Eteocles, et cetera, et cetera. It was just, how is Sophocles going to massage and rework the story to fit, whatever his ends were. So this play begins, and think of the setting behind me. So the orchestra here, people are all seated up here. Down here, you've got the stage and the scani, the house behind it, where actors go in to change costuming and such. And that also serves as the palace. So you've got the palace here, and out in front of it, the chorus is all standing. And they're offering prayers and such, and Oedipus comes out. And he asks them, what are they doing praying before me? Line 3. Ugh. All right. And then he goes on and says, line 7 and following, here I am myself. You all know me. The world knows my fame. I am Oedipus. Sounds a little bit arrogant to begin with, but, he's got good reason to be. So Oedipus, pulls up a priest, says, I'm ready to help you. I'll do anything. I'll be blind to misery, et cetera, et cetera. So the priest tells him, problem in the land, look around, see with your own eyes, he says, line 28, our ship pitches wildly, cannot lift her head from the depths. And so he uses the sailing, the naval metaphor, the same kind of metaphor we saw Creon use at the beginning of Antigone, when he came out and he said, the ship of state is now set aright, et cetera, et cetera. So the priest talks about the Black Plague upon the city, and he says to Oedipus, line 39, now we pray to you. You cannot equal the gods. Your children know that, bending at your altar. That is, we know you're not equal to the gods. We cannot pray to you like we would to them, but we are bending at your altar. That is, it's the altar that Oedipus has that he prays before to the gods. But we do rate you first of men. That is, you're not the gods, but you're the highest of humanity. All right? You freed us from the Sphinx. Line 48 or so. A God was with you, so they say. We believe it. You lifted up our lives. Skip several more lines. 58. Act to defend yourself, your former glory. Why? Because the city-state that Oedipus is king of now is dying. So defending himself, he will defend his glory. By defending his people, by solving whatever this problem is, he defends himself. 166. Rule our land. You know you have the power, but rule the land of the living. Right? Creon asked, is the city for the king or is the king for the city? And Haman was like, what? You would be a great king if you were by yourself on an island. Well, they're saying here, be a ruler of the land of the living. It's no good being a king of the dead. All right? So Oedipus tells them, I know what's going on. I've already seen to the problem. Line 80, he says, after a painful search, I found one cure. I acted at once. I sent Creon, my wife's own brother, to Delphi, to Apollo, etc. And today's the day he's supposed to be back. Okay? And the priest says, oh, look, here he comes. So Creon comes in. And Oedipus asks him around 97 or 98, Creon, prince, my kinsman, what do you bring us? What message from the god? Okay? So, Creon arrives, on the stage, out in public, in front of the people, and he says, I've got good news for you. It's going to be hard, but it's good news. Oedipus says, okay. But what were the god's words? No hope, nothing to fear in what you've said so far. Creon. Bear in mind the situation. They're out in front of the palace, and all these priests are out in front also. Creon's come in. He's just gotten back from hearing the word of the gods. And Oedipus says, tell us what you have to say. Creon, if you want my report in the presence of these people, and he points to the priests and such, he says, I'm ready now, or we might go inside. I can tell you what the god told me out here in public, in front of everybody, put it in a modern context, in front of CNN and Fox News and all the cable and etc. Or we could go into the Oval Office. We can go into the palace and I can talk to you privately. No, speak out. I grieve for these people far more than I fear for my own life. Okay? Little bit of almost an insinuation of dramatic irony, and that he's not totally aware of what he's saying. So Creon tells him, Apollo says, drive the corruption out. Don't harbor it any longer. Oedipus is like, okay, fine. What corruption? Murder. Whose murder? Laius, the king before you. Oedipus, never saw the man myself. Dramatic irony. Yes, he did. He's just unaware that he did. The audience is totally aware that he did. And so you can almost imagine, well, maybe in a 20th century audience, I don't know if an ancient Greek audience would have done that. If the audience was aware of everything, you can almost imagine a 20th century audience when he says, I never saw the man myself. Some people snickering and others going, oh no, he's going to get it for that. Okay. So Oedipus asked, where are the killers? Creon tells him, the oracle says, line 125, here in Thebes. Whatever is sought for can be caught. Whatever is neglected slips away. Well, according to Knox, that's That's almost really what is the main theme of the play. So, what's Knox's, the point, the main theme? That's not really the way to put it. Why does Oedipus suffer? That's the way to put it. Because he won't stop searching. He has to know the truth. Well, what does Creon say here? And again, these are the words of the gods. Whatever is sought for can be caught. Whatever is neglected slips away. Look at Oedipus's response. Where? In the palace. The first place he suggests is that the problem, the killers, are in the palace. And then he says, fields, foreign soil, etc., etc. Okay? So Oedipus asks, what happened to Laius? Where did he die? And they talk about that. They mention the shepherd. Creon says, line 138 or so, that the shepherd, the last survivor, said thieves attacked him, a whole band, not single-handed, cut Laius down, etc., etc. And Oedipus was like, so how come you didn't track him down then? Line 145 and following. What stopped you from tracking down the killer then and there? Creon, the singing, riddling Sphinx. It's almost like the moment Laius was killed, poof, up popped the Sphinx to the entrance to Thebes. Now, Thebes is called Thebes of the seven gates. That is 7 gates into the city. But apparently, somehow, the Sphinx stopped anybody from getting in or getting out of Thebes. Okay. So Oedipus says, 150. I'll start again. I'll bring it all to light myself. And he's just introduced one of the main images of the play, okay? Or maybe one of the main themes, if you want. Light versus darkness. So he's saying, I'll bring it all to light. Well, what's going to be brought to light? What is now hidden? What is now dark? Okay? And he goes on and says, line 154, I am the land's avenger by all rights and Apollo's champion too. Why is he the land's avenger? Because he's the king. By avenging the land, he's avenging himself. And Apollo's champion too, but not to some distant kinsman, no. That is, I'm not avenging a kinsman, even though literally he is. This is more dramatic irony. No, for my own sake, I'll rid us of this corruption. Why? Because he says, by avenging Laius, I defend myself. Notice the logic there. Well, if somebody could kill Laius, what's going to stop him from killing me? Okay. So he goes on and says, 164, 163 and 64, God help us, we will see our triumph or our fall. And the our there refers to Thebes, but it might also kind of be the royal we. We'll see our triumph. Well, it is that. He does triumph. How? He does find out the truth, which results in his fall. Notice that. So his recognition of who he is what leads to his downfall. That's the recognition and the reversal that I was talking about earlier. So the priest says, when Oedipus and Creon go into the palace, the priest says, line 165, the kindness we came for, Oedipus volunteers himself. Well, what was the kindness that they came for? They were seeking, they were praying to the gods, essentially for this plague to be stopped. Well, according to most even pagan beliefs, the gods don't just, stop a plague. What do you have to do? Something has to be done, okay? A scapegoat has got to be found that those sins, those bad actions can be thrust upon so that that thing can then be driven out of the town, slaughtered, etc., etc. So the priest just said, Oedipus is going to be the, well, let's use a good, Christian term used in a lot of Protestant churches, the propitiation. Oedipus is going to be the sacrifice, okay? So the chorus then comes in and they start singing. And who do they sing to? They call out to Zeus, they call out to Apollo, they call out to Athena, they call out to Artemis, again, Apollo. And what do they say? They call on those gods to come down to help Thebes. Line 190. We hear, no, no, the miseries numberless, grief on grief, no end, too much to bear, we are all dying. Now, that's both literal and figurative. That's both specific and general. It's literal and it's specific in that it's talking about what is happening to Thebes right now. It's figurative and it's general in that it's referring to the common lot of the human race. Okay? 204. Death, so many deaths. Numberless deaths on deaths, no end. Thebes is dying. Look, her children stripped of pity. Generations strewn on the ground, unburied, unwept. Echoes of Antigone and the character Polynices. The dead spreading death, and the young wives of gray-haired mothers with them cling to the altars. So they're describing there what is going on in Thebes right now. Okay. Next page, round 228 or so. Again, they call out to Zeus. Why? Because he's described as you who twirl the lightning, Zeus, Father, thunder death to nothing. They're praying to Zeus to end death. And then they pray to Apollo to whip his longbow's golden cord to shoot death, essentially. And then Artemis, the huntress, ride death down in pain. God of the headdress gleaming gold, I cry to you, your name and ours are one, Dionysius. Okay, burn, line 243 or so, burn that god of death that all gods hate. So throughout this choral ode, they're praying to the gods to end this problem. Notice they're not praying to the gods to send a deliverer, send a savior. They're asking for the gods to directly intervene. Okay? Oedipus comes back out. And he says, you pray to the gods? Let me grant your prayers. Now, think of the import of that. What could that really mean? You pray to the gods. Well, I can answer your prayers. Now that could be taken, don't bother the gods, they're busy with other things. It could also mean, I can do what the gods can do. See, if you look at it in light of the second, I can do what the gods can do, then what does this show on Oedipus's part? Hubris, extreme arrogance, the kind of arrogance that Agamemnon would not show when he was afraid to step down onto that red carpet. So he says, come listen, do what the plague demands. Okay? I will speak out now as a stranger to the story, a stranger to the crime. All dramatic irony again, because audience knows he's not a stranger to the story, and he is the perpetrator of the crime. Okay? So he goes on, line 250 and following, and he says, I'm going to make this proclamation to all of Thebes. Here's the proclamation. If any one of you knows who murdered Laius, the son of Labdacus, I order him to reveal the whole truth to me. That is, okay, to reveal means to uncover. If something needs to be uncovered, then it's obviously covered. If it's covered, then it's what? It's in the dark. So bring it to light. bring what was hidden out into the light. I order him to reveal the whole truth to me. Nothing to fear. That is, if you know who did it, don't worry. I'm not going to punish you. You just got to come up, tell me the truth. Even if it was you. Okay? Let him speak up. Nobody responds. So I said, okay. So that was first, right? If you know the truth, speak up now. Nobody does. 262. Next, so point 2. If anyone knows the murderer is a stranger, a man from alien soil, come speak up. I'll give him a handsome reward, lay of gratitude. So if you know the murderer was a stranger, doesn't live here, speak up. Nobody does. Okay. 3. But if you keep silent, 265 or so, if you keep silent, if anyone panicking, trying to shield himself or friend or kin, rejects my offer, then hear what I will do. I order you, every citizen of the state where I hold throne and power, that is all the territory of Thebes, banish this man. Whoever he may be, never shelter him, never speak a word to him, never make him partner to your prayers, your victims burn to the gods. Never let the holy water touch his hands, drive him out, each of you from every home. Who's he talking about? The person who killed Laius. Okay? He is the plague, the heart of our corruption, as Apollo's oracle has just revealed to me. So I honor my obligations, I fight for the god and for the murdered man. Now his curse comes, he offers his curse on the murderer himself. Let that man drag out his life in agony, step by painful step. I curse myself as well, ... The ... The ... means there's a pause. And I think the pause is so that all the people out here in the audience can hear this and kind of, oh, here it comes. If by any chance he proves to be an intimate of our house, that is, an insider in the palace, here at my heart, that is someone who eats at my table, with my full knowledge, may the curse I just called down on him strike me. With my full knowledge means, if the murderer is someone in my house, then with my full knowledge, with total awareness, the curse that I just called down on him, that'll live out his days in pain, etc. Nobody will pay any attention to him. They'll drive him out. May that curse fall down on me. And that's the central dramatic irony really in the poem, because everybody in the audience knows, uh-oh, you know what's going to hit the fan now, because he's just called down the terror of the gods on himself. Okay? So, 292 and following. He goes on and he starts to talk about Laius. He says, you guys should have searched for her, the killer. A man so noble, your king, brought down in blood. You should have searched, but I'm the king now. I hold the throne that he held then, possess his bed, and a wife who shares our seed in more ways than Oedipus is aware of. But again, the audience is totally aware of it. And he pauses again. Why, our seed might be the same, children born of the same mother. Well, that's true. Their seed, that is Oedipus's and Jocasta's seed, is children born of the same mother, because Oedipus's children are his siblings, which he's unaware of. He says, these might have created blood bonds between us, and if his hope of offspring had not met disaster. So I will fight for him as if he were my father. More dramatic irony. Stop at nothing, etc., etc. And he goes on to mention, the family history, which the back of the book gives you, I mentioned the other day, Oedipus's genealogy, the family tree, at the very back. And again, they go back to the gods, to Ares and Aphrodite and such. Okay. Okay. So the leader says, so Oedipus has charged all of them. And the leader says, 3:17 and following, as for the search, Apollo pressed it on us. He should name the killer. In other words, Apollo knows who the killer is. Why didn't he just name him? Oedipus, you got a good point, quite right. But to force the gods to act against their will, no man has the power. We can't force the gods. Unfortunately, the gods can force humans in the Greek system. Okay? So, the leader said, all right, so if we can't force the gods, what about Tiresias? Oedipus, already one step ahead of you. He says, I sent the escorts twice within the hour. I'm surprised he isn't here. Leader, we need him. All we have are old rumors. 3:30, line 3:30, Oedipus. Which rumors? I'll search out every word. That is, I've not heard these rumors. So tell me these rumors and I'll do what? I'll investigate every word of them. So the leader starts, they say Elias was killed by travelers, plural. Oedipus, yeah, I know, but no one could find the murderer. Okay. So the leader says, oh, look, here comes Tiresias. Line 3:30, looks like 8 or 9. They bring him on at last, the seer, the man of God. The truth lives inside him alone. Look how Oedipus addresses Tiresias, because within a couple pages, he's going to address him entirely different. O Tiresias, master of all the mysteries of our life, all you teach and all you dare not tell, signs in the heavens, signs that walk the earth, blind as you are because he was physically blind, you can feel all the more what sickness haunts our city. You, my Lord, are the one shield, the one savior we can find. In other words, if Tiresias can't help us, no one can. So, skipping much, he says, 3:55, rescue yourself, your city, rescue me, rescue everything infected by the dead. We are in your hands. For a man to help others with all his gifts and native strength, that is the noblest work. To help others, that's the greatest thing you can do. Look at Tiresias' response. How terrible to see the truth when the truth is only pain to him who sees. See there means what? It doesn't mean literal sight. It means to perceive, to understand the truth. I knew it well, but I put it from my mind, else I never would have come. Knew what well? That seeing the truth is pain to him who sees? Could be. Could also mean that he's known all along who the murderer of Elias was. Oedipus, what? Why so grim? Tiresias, 3:64. You bear your burdens, I'll bear mine. Send me home. In other words, you've got your problems, I've got my problems, just let me go. Strange response. Unlawful, unfriendly too to the state that bred and reared you. You withhold the word of God, that is, you would withhold the truth from us, you would withhold from us the cause of our suffering, you would withhold from us the relief from our suffering. Sorry, I've been awake since about 2:30 this morning, and it's now 2:15 in the afternoon. Tiresias, 3:69. I fail to see, perceive, understand. So there's another theme or trope within seeing versus blindness. So sight versus darkness, seeing versus blindness. I fail to see that your own words are so well timed. For the love of God, don't turn away. Not if you know something. We beg you. And all of us on our knees. So the implication is Oedipus falls on his knees. Tiresias, 3:73. None of you knows that I will never reveal my dreadful secrets, not to say your own. I won't reveal my secrets, that is the secrets I have inside, not to say your own. That is, and I'll keep your secrets also, Oedipus. What? You know and you won't tell? You're bent on betraying us? Destroying Thieves? I'd rather not cause pain for you or me. See, Tiresias knows. If Oedipus learns the truth, Tiresias is going to suffer. So why this useless interrogation? You'll get nothing from me. Nothing, you scum of the earth. Kind of different than, O Tiresias, master of all the mysteries of our life. You, my lord, are the one shield, the savior we can find. Now he's the scum of the earth. You won't talk? 381. Nothing moves you? Tiresias, you criticize my temper? Unaware of the one you live with, you revile me? What does he mean, my temper? What do we mean when we say someone has a temper? Well, it means they get angry easily. It means they respond rashly. They respond impetuously. Not impetuously like, they're in a checkout lane at a store and, ooh, look, and they buy something right there. Not that kind of impetuously. It's the kind of, responding angrily at something. And so Tiresias alludes, you criticize my temper and you're unaware of the one you live with? And you revile me? In other words, I'm not sleeping with mom, Oedipus, who could restrain his anger hearing you? Tiresias, what will come, will come. That's really fate. What will be, will be. Famous song from the 1960s. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. That's what that phrase means. Even if I shroud it all in silence. In other words, Tiresias is saying, even if I don't say a word, the truth will come out. It will be revealed, just not by me. Oedipus, what will come? Notice, what's the hidden thing? Tell me. Do as you like, build your anger to whatever pitch that is, however high it's going to rise. You please, rage your worst. Now, is Oedipus shown rage yet? Not really. I mean, he did call him scum of the earth, but that's, So Tiresias is saying, you're just kind of starting. If you've read the Harry Potter novels, at the end of the 5th Harry Potter book, Harry's in Dumbledore's office, and Dumbledore tells him, you're not nearly as angry at me as you have a right to be. He said, you're nearly to the point of killing me. And if you really knew everything that I'm about to tell you, yeah, you have a right, okay? Oedipus, well, I'll let loose. I have such fury in me. Dash, pause. Now I see it all. I have such fury in me, and what does he immediately do? He jumps to a huge conclusion, or he makes a huge jump to a very small conclusion, either way you want to look at it. What's the conclusion he jumps to? You helped hatch the plot. You did the work. Well, short of killing him, because, you're blind. But given eyes, I'd say you did the killing single-handed. That is, and if you could see, I would say you killed Laius himself. On what basis does Oedipus make this claim? What shred of evidence? There's none. Okay, so what is that an example of? I think that's an example of a flaw that Knox essentially says doesn't exist. What's the flaw? He's rash. He doesn't calmly deliberate and think things through. Okay? So Tiresias replies, or responds. I charge you then, line 398, I charge you then, submit to that decree you just laid down. That is, the decree he gave to the people before Tiresias replied. Shun the murderer, kick him out of your houses, kick him out of the city, etc. From this day onward, speak to no one, not the citizens, not myself. You are the curse. Oedipus, what? How? You think you can get away with this? 404, Tiresias, I already have, or I have already. The truth with all its power lives inside me. What does he mean? What did we hear about Tiresias in Antigone? He's always told the truth. He has never lied. And more importantly, kind of the Greek system, he's never been wrong. Okay? Who primed you for this? Oedipus asks. Primed. Like when you prime a pump, you fill it with water first. Oedipus is asking, who put you up to this? Not your profits. Trade. Trade. It's economic language. He's saying, this is how you make money. Tiresias, you did. You forced me. Say it again so I can understand it better. That is, repeat your charge. Okay? No, I can't say I understood your meaning. Tiresias, 4:12 or so. You are the murderer you hunt. Wow. That obscenity twice. 4:15. Tiresias, shall I say more so you can really rage? Have it. You cannot imagine. I tell you, you and your loved ones live together in infamy. You cannot see how far you've gone in guilt. And in guilt there means in sin, in behaving wrongly, in doing wrongly, in violating the God's laws. Oedipus, you think you can keep up with this and never suffer? That is, you think you can go on talking like this and not suffer the consequences? Tiresias, if truth has any power, yeah, if I'm speaking the truth. Oedipus, it does. That is, truth does have power, but not for you. You've lost your power. What's the power? His prophetic ability. Stone blind, that is, blind as a stone deaf, senses, eyes, blind as stone. You don't see, you don't perceive anything. Tiresias, I pity you. Flinging at me the very insults each man here will fling at you so soon. Foreshadowing and prophecy. Oedipus, blind, talking about Tiresias, lost in the night, because it's always darkness where Tiresias is, in his eyes. Endless night that nursed you. And that he's saying that's a negative thing. He's saying that Oedipus is a thing of darkness, in other words. You can't hurt me or anyone else who sees the light. And he doesn't just mean like sees the light of the sun. Oedipus is kind of talking about, connected to the gods. You can never touch me. Notice the arrogance there, because Oedipus is saying, I am so far above you. Tiresias, true. You're right. It is not your fate to fall at my hands. That is, I'm not going to touch you. Apollo's quite enough. And he will take some pains. That is, Apollo is going to exert himself to work this out. How does Oedipus reply? Does he say anything about Apollo? Nope. Crayon. Is this conspiracy his or yours? How does he get to Crayon? Well, who came back from the oracle? Creon. Who did the oracle speak for? Apollo. So when Tiresias mentions Apollo, Oedipus thinks Tiresias, Apollo, Creon. He jumps to another wild conclusion. Again, no evidence, no argument, nothing that really suggests this. Creon is not your downfall. In other words, just stop. And then Oedipus goes on. Big long speech about power, beginning around 432 or so. Power, wealth, and empire, skill outstripping skill, blah, 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 blah. I never sought it, that is, I never sought power. For this alone, Creon, soul of trust, my loyal friend, hungry to overthrow me, okay? So Oedipus, questions Tiresias, if you're such a great prophet, how come you couldn't solve the riddle of the Sphinx, et cetera, et cetera? You think you'll stand by Creon when he's king, line 435. And the leader kind of intervenes. 460. I would suggest his words were spoken in anger, Oedipus. Yours too. It's not what we need. In other words, can we just tone it down here? Can we just, calm down, talk about this rationally? He says the best solution to the oracle, the words that Creon brought back, the riddle posed by God, that's what we should look for. Tiresias. So he responds with almost the same length speech. You are the king, no doubt, but in one respect, line 464, but in one respect at least, I am your equal. The right to reply. That is, you can't make me shut up. I claim that privilege too. I am not your slave. That is, I'm an equal citizen. I serve Apollo. I don't need Creon to speak for me in public. Apollo does, because Apollo doesn't, usually come down with the riffraff. So, Tiresias says, you mock my blindness? Fine, fine. You, with your precious eyes, line 470, you are blind to the corruption of your life, to the house you live in, those you live with. Who are your parents? What? Why does he throw that question in? Do you know? All unknowing. Now, modern word for unknowing that we use much more frequently than unknowing is ignorant. See, ignorant doesn't mean stupid. Ignorant just means not knowing. About quantum physics, I am ignorant. About recording industry equipment, I am ignorant. About a whole slew of things, I am woefully ignorant, right? He says, all unknowing, you are the scourge of your own flesh and blood. The dead below the earth and the living here above, the double lash of your mother, your father's curse, will whip you from this land one day, their footfall treading you down in terror, darkness shrouding your eyes, that now can see the light. Again, prophecy. Soon you'll scream aloud. What rock of Kithaeron won't scream back in echo? Kithaeron is a mountain in Greece. It's outside Thieves, and it was the practice to abandon unwanted babies there. Just take them out, throw them on the hillside, let, nature, wild animals take care of them. That day you learn the truth about your marriage, the wedding march that sang you into your halls, the lusty voyage home to the fatal harbor, the crowd of other horrors you'd never dreamed will level you with yourself and all your children. He says, there. Now smears with insults. Creon, myself, every word. No man will ever be rooted from the earth, rooted, that is uprooted, pulled away, as brutally as you. Okay? Oedipus, get out of here. Tiresias, I didn't want to come. 494. Oedipus, if I thought you would blurt out such absurdities, you'd have died waiting before I'd had you summoned. Tiresias, you call me absurd? To you, not to your parents, the ones who bore you found me sane enough. What? What? Who is my father? So who brought the prophecy to Laius, and Jocasta. Tiresias. This day will bring your birth and your destruction. Riddles. All you can say are riddles, murk, and darkness. In C.S. Lewis's final novel, Till We Have Faces, main character makes this claim about the gods. It's set in ancient times, in a country north of Greece. And she says, all the gods do is talk in riddles and darkness and images. Why do they never speak clearly? Okay? Tiresias. Yeah, but you're the best man at solving riddles. Come on, riddle master. Solve it. Mock me for that, and you'll reveal my greatness, your great good fortune. True, it was your ruin. Okay? Oedipus doesn't understand now, but he's going to later. But how is his solving the riddle of the Sphinx his great ruin? What did he receive as a result of solving the riddle of the Sphinx? He received the kingship and the queen, who was his mother. Okay? So Tiresias says, page 185, line 510. Listen to me closely. The man you've sought so long, proclaiming, cursing up and down, the murderer of Laius, he is here. This is as Oedipus is walking back towards the palace. So as he's walking, Tiresias says it so he can hear it. A stranger you may think who lives among you, he soon will be revealed a native Theban, but he will take no joy in the revelation. Blind who now has eyes, beggar who now is rich, he will grope his way toward a foreign soil, a stick tapping before him step by step. That's the third play, Oedipus at Colonus. Oedipus is making his way to this town of Colonus. I believe it's been 35 years since I've read that play. I believe Antigone is with him. I don't think as many is, but she might be. And he's, walking with his little cane, his stick, in front of him. Revealed at last, brother, and now Oedipus goes inside the palace. So he doesn't hear these next lines, but the audience does. Revealed at last, brother and father both, to the children he embraces, to his mother, son and husband both. He sewed the loins his father sewed. He had sex with his mom. He spilled his father's blood. Okay? Go in and reflect on that. Solve that. And if you find I've lied, then call me blind. And the chorus then says, who is the man the voice of God denounces resounding out of the rocky gorge of Delphi? Who is it? Who's the guilty person? Because Tiresias didn't just now say, he didn't just say, you killed Laius. Notice he spoke in a riddle, right? So they then say, the chorus does, around line 550 or so, the prophet scans the birds, he shatters me with terror, I can't accept him, I can't deny him, I don't know what to say, I'm lost, the wings of dark foreboding beating, I cannot see what's to come, what's still to come. Skip several lines, 561, Zeus and Apollo know, they know the great masters of all the dark and depth of human life. That is, they know everything. But the chorus still said, I can't see how he can be right. Tiresias, 567. No, not till I see these charges proved will I side with his accusers. That is, I got to have real proof before I agree that Tiresias is right. Well, in a court of law, one thing that would be introduced would be Tiresias's past history, and he's always been right. Okay, so Creon comes out from the side. He doesn't come out from the palace, and he says, "I've heard that Oedipus has just slandered me. That my reputation, line 579, is in ruins." He said, "Can any of you verify that?" Yeah, he said some things. 587, 86. Charge was made in public, wasn't it? That is, he said this out here, right? Did I put the prophet up spreading lies? Yeah, he said such things, but I don't know with what intent. That I don't know if he really meant it. Well, was his glance steady? That is, was he looking straight ahead, or were the eyes rolling? And did he look crazy? Well, I never look to judge the ones in power. Why does the leader say that? 592. I never look to judge the ones in power. Who am I to question, Oedipus? The leader's trying not to take a stand. He doesn't want to get in between two, pillars of power, so to speak. So Oedipus comes out, and it comes out. 594. You have the gall to show your face before the palace gate. You plotting to kill me, the king? I see it all, the marauding thief. Tell me, when did you spin out your plot? Line 600. Crayon, 607. Are you quite finished? It's your turn to listen for just as long as you've instructed. In other words, shut the hell up. Okay? So, they go back and forth. I'm going to skip some stuff that I was going to talk about. So Oedipus asks, 623 or so, how long has it been since Laius? Crayon, what did Laius do? Oedipus, vanished. How long has it been since he vanished? Swept from sight. Phew, that's a long time back. Oedipus, was the prophet at his trade? That is, was Tiresias prophesying then? Skilled as he is today. Just as honored. He was just as believed back then. Oedipus, did he ever refer to me then? No. Line 630. But you investigated the murder, right? And he said, yeah, we tried. 634. Oedipus, but the great seer never accused me then. Why not? Crayon, I don't know. And when I don't, I keep quiet. Slam, when I don't know something, I shut up. When Oedipus didn't know something, what did he do? He accused Tiresias, and then he accused Crayon. Okay? So, 638, Oedipus says, 639, if the two of you had never put heads together, we would never have heard about my killing Laius. You guys conspired. Crayon's like, what? He says, hold on. Just hold on. Stop. Let me ask you a question. 645. You're married to my sister, right? Yeah. And you rule the land with her with equal power, right? She receives from me whatever she desires. Notice, Oedipus kind of, no, not with equal power. She gets whatever she wants. I give it to her. Crayon. And I'm the third? All of us are equals? Line 650, Oedipus. It's there you show your stripes. Okay? So what's Crayon's point? You've got Oedipus, Jocasta, my fingers are sore, and Crayon. Oedipus, Jocasta, and Crayon. And he says, equal power. Okay? Crayon. He says, now look at it this way, 653. Who in his right mind would rather rule and live in anxiety than sleep in peace? Particularly if he enjoys the same authority. I don't yearn for a kingship, not with a king's power in my hands. Who would? Line 659. No one with any sense of self-control. What's his point? 663. How could kingship please me more than influence power without a qualm? Here's a modern example. Let's assume Melania Trump ruled, so to speak, with Donald Trump. So we need to throw in somebody else. Let's assume she had a brother, Franz, okay? This would be like Franz, we'll say Crayon. This would be like if Crayon was Melania's brother, going to Trump and saying, the three of us have equal power. And yet you're accusing me of wanting your position. Why would I want your position when I have all the perks of power and none of the responsibilities? In other words, you're the one who has to make all the decisions. You're the one who has to face the, the press, face the whoever, Congress, etc. Meanwhile, I can fly around in Air Force One whenever I want. I can go wherever I want, do whatever, etc. 668. Now all men sing my praises, all salute me. All who request your favors curry mine. Those who want things from you suck up to me. I am their best hope. Success rests in me. Why give up that and borrow trouble? I mean, it's pretty logical. Why would I want the problems that you have to deal with as king when I get all the perks of being king without any of the headaches? And then he offers his coup de grace kind of logic. 676. You want proof? That is, you want proof I'm not lying to you? Go to Delphi yourself, examine the oracle, and see if I've reported the message word for word. And if you find out that I and Tiresias are lying, arrest me, execute me. That's a pretty bold statement. If you can prove I'm lying, kill me. Okay? Leader, 691. Oh, that's good advice. Those who jump to conclusions may go wrong. Really? That's all right. 693, Oedipus. When my enemy moves against me quickly, plots in secret, I move quickly too. I must. I plot and pay him back. In other words, I have to jump to conclusions before he reaches those conclusions. Crayon, what do you want? You want me banished? No, I want you dead. Okay, well, at least, he stated it clearly, openly. Just to show how ugly a grudge? No. You don't think I'm serious? Oedipus asked, line 700, Crayon. I think you're insane. You're insane. Crayon asks, what if you're wholly wrong? What if everything you are saying is wrong? Oedipus, no matter, I must rule. What did Crayon say in Antigone? He said, something to the effect to Haman that, where is Haman? He says to Haman the thing that I have to rule, even right or wrong. Is Thieves about to tell me how to rule? Am I to rule this land from others or myself? It's no city at all, owned by one man alone. What the city is the king's, that's the law. Wasn't the exact spot. It was... Crayon says, line 748. But that man the city places in authority, his orders must be obeyed, large and small, right and wrong. Okay? What if you're wholly wrong? No matter, I must rule, even if I'm wrong. Crayon, not if you rule unjustly. See, Crayon's introducing a moral argument there. Kings must only rule if they rule justly or morally. Okay? Oedipus, here in Thebes, my city. Crayon, my city too. So it's the same argument, partially at least, that we saw back in Antigone, produced 11 years earlier. Okay? So Jocasta comes out. She hears Crayon and Oedipus arguing. And she comes out. 709. Have you no sense, poor misguided men, such shouting? Why this public outburst? Aren't you ashamed, with the land so sick, to stir up private quarrels? And she looks at Oedipus and says, into the palace, now. Crayon, you go home. Who does that sound like? Into the palace, now. Sounds like a mother to a child. Okay? So they talk a little bit. Crayon says, curse me, let me die and be damned, line 720, if I've done you any wrong. Jocasta says, believe it, Oedipus. Do it for me. Oedipus. Chorus says to Oedipus, line 726, give way, my king. What does that mean, give way? Yield. Give up your anger. Give up your hatred. Give up your obstinateness. Give up your stubbornness. Oedipus, you want concessions from me? Chorus, respect him. He's been no fool in the past, and now he's strong with the oath he swears to God. That is, he is pledged to the God. Okay? Oedipus, you know what you're asking. I do, then out with it. The man's your friend, your kin. He's under oath. 734, Oedipus. Know full well, if that is what you want me dead or banished from the land. Well, that's what he called down upon the murderer. Okay? So the chorus goes on, and then Oedipus says, fine, let him go. And then Crayon says, line 746, look at you, sullen and yielding, brutal in your rage, you will go too far. That is, you'll push too far. It's perfect justice. Natures like yours are hardest on themselves. How? What is Oedipus's nature? He's got to push. He's always got to push. Okay? That was part of the problem with Agamemnon. That was part of the problem with the character Ulysses. He's always pushing. Okay? He's unyielding, Oedipus is. He's stubborn. He's rash. And those three, characteristics taken together. So, chorus turns to Jocasta. They talk back and forth. And Jocasta wants to know what, Oedipus and Crayon talked about. Right? The chorus kind of begs Oedipus to steal them, to steer them through the troubles, et cetera, et cetera. And Jocasta kind of takes Oedipus aside. It's page 200, line 768, and says, Oedipus, tell me, what is it? Why you're so unbending? There's that, rigid and upright. So Oedipus says, okay, I'll tell you. He glances at the chorus, and he says, Crayon says I murdered Laius. I'm guilty. Notice Jocasta doesn't say, off with his head, or what, that's crazy. She says, how does he know? That is, what's his evidence? Oedipus, he sent Tiresias. He sent the prophet. 778, a prophet. Free yourself of every charge. Listen to me, learn some peace of mind. No skill in the world, nothing human can penetrate the future. Okay? It's very clear, it's very declarative. Nothing human can penetrate the future. Now, she thinks that what she's about to say will put Oedipus totally at ease. For example, and she tells him the prophecy. Oracle came to Laius one day. She says, I won't say it's from Apollo himself, but his underlings, his priests. Why? Because she's not accusing Apollo of being wrong. She's accusing the priest of being wrong. And she says, and this oracle said that our son would strike him down, would strike Laius down. But Laius, as the report goes, was killed by strangers, thieves, at a place where 3 roads meet. Now, there's a new detail we haven't heard before. And my son, well, he wasn't 3 days old, and the father fastened his ankles and flung him away on the mountain. How did he fasten his ankles? Imagine my fingers are 2 nails, or 1 nail if you want. They take his ankles, put them together like this, and drive that nail between his ankles, through his ankles, okay? So she says, 796 or so, that's how the seers in all their revelations mapped out the future. Whatever the God needs and seeks, he'll bring to light himself. If it's really from Apollo, he'll make it happen. He'll make it known. Oedipus. 801. Strange hearing you just now. My mind wandered. My thoughts racing back in time and forth to now. What do you mean? Why so anxious, startled? Now, bear in mind, because they're wearing these big masks, it's, the startled isn't he gets a look on his face, because they wouldn't see his face like that. Okay? Oedipus. Okay, he's giving her a way to kind of restate what she said. He said, I thought I heard you say Laius was cut down at a place where 3 roads meet. And by saying, I thought I heard you say, that's his way of saying, maybe I heard wrong. Jocasta says, no, that's right. Where? Be precise. What's happening? What's starting to happen? The little light bulb in his head, the dimmer switch has been turned on, and it's starting to brighten. Jocasta says, place called Phokis. 2 branching roads, one from Dahlia, one from Delphi. They come together, there's a crossroads. When? How long ago did this happen? Why? Well, because Oedipus knows he killed somebody at a crossroads, at that particular crossroads. When? Let's see. Heralds no sooner reported Laius dead than you showed up. So, like the heralds, rode. They said Laius is dead, and you appeared almost immediately thereafter. My God, what have you planned to do to me? What does he mean? What have you planned to do to me? Why does Oedipus say, my God, my God? Is that Oedipus saying, that's it, I'm guilty? How did Laius look? Describe him. Had he reached his prime? Swarthy, he's Greek. Swarthy, gray had just begun around his temples. His build, kind of like you. She just said, she's essentially just saying, looks kind of like you. Okay. No, no. I think I've just called down a dreadful curse upon myself. I simply didn't know. What does he mean he didn't know? He didn't know what, and he didn't know when. He didn't know that he was the killer? Okay. Could be one of the things he doesn't know. He didn't know who it was he killed when he killed that person. Probably. There's a lot of things he doesn't know. Okay. And by the way, that's why, I suggest my definition of tragedy is when a character acts, performs some deed, but does it on the basis of incomplete information. Okay? So he's acting without having all the information that he or she needs. Acosta, what do you, I shudder. I have a terrible fear the blind seer can see. She says, Oedipus says, one more thing. Oh, what is it? Laius, did he go with a light or heavy escort? Several men at arms, like a lord or king, 5 in the party, herald among them, single wagon carrying Laius. Now I can see it all clear as day. Well, that's, seeing it in his mind's eye, in his memory. He remembers it like it was yesterday, okay? He was blind to it before. It was hidden before. Now he sees, okay? So he's going to, by the end of the play, he's going to leave physically blind because he's, up until this point, he's been mentally or spiritually blind, let's say. So his mental, spiritual state is going to match his physical state. Okay, so he says, how do you know all this? Who told you? Lone survivor. Is he in a pouch? She says, no. As soon as he got home and saw you, he has to serve farthest province away. Can he be returned? Can we get him back? She says, yes. Okay. She said, what's your problem? So Oedipus tells her his story. I can hold nothing back from you now. I've reached this pitch of dark foreboding. Okay, line 850. Whom would I turn toward but you as I go through all this? Who would I turn to except for you, my wife? So he tells her, my father was Polybus, king of Corinth. My mother, Dorian, her name was Meripe. We had a party. Some guy said that I wasn't my father's son. I told my parents. They said, shrug it off. The guy was drunk. I couldn't. I went to the oracle. And the oracle of Delphi told me, line 873, you are fated to couple with your mother. You will bring a breed of children into the light no man can bear to see. You will kill your father, the one who gave you life. And he thinks, don't want to kill my father. Really don't want to sleep with my mother and bring forth children who are my siblings. I heard all that and I ran. I abandoned Corinth from that day on. I gauged its landfall only by the stars. In other words, I kept running. Okay? And as I fled, I reached that very spot where the great king, you say, met his death. And he says, and you described him as he was, and they wouldn't move. They tried to knock me off the road, and I killed them. I killed them all. 899. But if there is any blood tie between Laius and the stranger, what man alive more miserable than I, more hated by the gods? So what's his recognition so far? Well, I must be the murderer of Laius because I killed a man described as you said, and okay, all these curses. 905. I, no one but I, brought down these piling curses on myself. And you, his wife, I've touched, and you were married to him, and I killed him, and I touched you, and I had sex with you, and we had children. And he says, wasn't I born for torment? Look me in the eyes. Notice he hasn't recognized everything yet. He doesn't know the full truth. I must be exiled, etc., etc. Why, 918 or so. Wouldn't a man of judgment say, and wouldn't he be right, some savage power has brought this down upon my head? It's almost like he's saying, I'm not to blame. Okay? So the leader says, 925, hold off there, question the witness, to have some hope. Oedipus, you're right, I'm waiting for him. Jocasta, why? Well, if it turns out his story matches yours, I've escaped the worst. How so? He said thieves. Multiple. If he says thieves, multiple, I can't be the murderer of Laius because it was just me. Jocasta. I told you precisely what he said. Line 941. And even if you should vary his first report by one man more or less, still, my lord, he could never make the murder of Laius truly fit the prophecy. Why? Because Apollo said my son would be the murderer of Laius. Okay? Now, pause here for a moment. Well, let me go on. She says, so much for prophecy, it's neither here nor there. From this day on, I wouldn't look right or left. That is, I wouldn't pay any attention to it. All right? So the chorus goes on and talks about destiny and great laws towering and pride breeding the tyrant, et cetera, et cetera. 970. But if any man comes striding high and mighty in all he says and does, no fear of justice, no reverence for the temples of the gods, let a rough doom tear him down, repay his pride, break neck, ruin his pride. Well, they're describing Oedipus there. Okay? So Jocasta comes out. She says, Oedipus is beside himself, racked with anguish, no longer a man of sense, and the messenger comes in. And the messenger asks, I'm looking for Oedipus. Leader says, this is his palace. He's inside. Here's his wife. Here's his queen, his wife and mother, next line, of his children. Okay? I think there's a pun going on there. So let me back up and say something I was going to say earlier. When Oedipus said, if he stole the same number, I cannot be the killer. She goes on and talks about, the prophecy was explicit, son doomed, kill my husband, my son, etc. So Oedipus ran away from Corinth because of the prophecy that he would kill his father and sleep with his mother. All right? Now, when he ran away, he knew who his parents were. So he ran away so he wouldn't kill his father and he wouldn't sleep with his mother. What's another way of looking at that prophecy, though? What's another way of responding to it? Let me put it that way. Never kill any man old enough to be your father. Never sleep with any woman old enough to be your mother. And maybe you really want to hedge your bets. Never kill any man who is 12, 15 years older than you. Never sleep with any woman who is 10, 15 years older than you, period. Okay? So this messenger comes in and he says, I've got great news for you and your husband, 1022 or so. He says, I'm from Corinth. And he says, the people there, they want to make Oedipus king of Corinth. What happened to Polybus? Dead. And Jocasta tells the servant, go get Oedipus. And then she says, line 1036, you prophecies of the gods, where are you now? This is the man that Oedipus feared for years. He fled him not to kill him, and now he's dead, quite by chance, etc., etc. So Oedipus comes out. Jocasta tells him this guy's from Corinth. The messenger says, Polybus is dead. Oedipus, 1054, says to Jocasta, see what a bunch of hooey prophecies of the gods are. Look, Polybus is dead. I couldn't have killed him. Prophecies are meaningless, etc. So his father's dead. 1068 or so. Oh, yeah, but mother's bad. Yeah, I still have to fear that part. See, he's not taking the prophecy as a package deal, that if one part of it is false, all of it's going to be false. He's saying, that's one part, but there's this other part, and I got to make sure this one doesn't happen. Jocasta. And Freud bases everything on this. Why should a man, line 1069, why should a man fear? It's all chance. Chance rules our lives. Okay? Just Everything that happens is total, blind, random chance. Not a man on earth can see a day ahead, groping through the dark. Better to live at random best we can. And as for this marriage with your mother, have no fear. Many a man, this is what Freud bases his entire Oedipus complex on. Many a man before you in his dreams has shared his mother's bed. Okay? That's it. Take such things for shadows, nothing at all. Live, Oedipus, as if there's no tomorrow. Why? Because everything is chance. If life is ultimately meaningless, then live for what? Live for right now. Don't even think about tomorrow. Because you know, tomorrow may never come for you. You might die in the next minute. Oedipus, you know, those are brave words. And you'd persuade me if mother weren't alive. That is, and if I found out Merope was dead, but your father's death, that's got to bring you comfort. Yeah, but she's still alive. And the messenger's listening to all this. He goes, who's this you're talking about? Merope, wife of Polybus. Why do you fear her? Prophecy. Can you tell me? Says, yeah, I must make love with my own mother, shed my father's blood. You're afraid of that? 1097 or so? That's what kept you? Yeah, I'm my father. No, I can ease your conscience with all that. 1105. My boy, it's clear you don't know what you're doing. Okay? And that's kind of the central point almost of the whole play. Oedipus doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks he does. This is the synergy idea I was talking about. Oedipus is thinking he's doing all this stuff down here, but the gods up here, they see exactly what's going on. Oedipus thinks he can, think football. Oedipus thinks he can do an end run around the gods, around fate. Okay? You ran from them, dodging home, terrified. Okay? 11 or so. Don't you know? Okay, so he told them earlier, you don't know what you're doing. Don't you know? You nothing, but I'm their son. Polybus was nothing to you, not in blood. What do you mean? Polybus was not my father? No more than I am. He and I are equals. My father, how can my father equal nothing? That is because you are nothing to me. Neither was he. No more your father. Then why did he call me? Because you're a gift. He took you from my hands. Where did you find me? Middle of the next page, 1124. I stumbled on you down the woody flanks of Mount Kithaeron. You were a herdsman, a vagabond? Yeah, I was your savior in your worst hour. Was I in pain when you picked me up, line 1130? Look at your ankles. Really, you got to bring that up again? Oedipus means club foot. His ankles are all swollen. He walks with a limp. Your ankles were pinned together. I set you free. You got your name from that misfortune. Who did it? I don't know. The one who gave you to me. He'd know. Wait, you didn't just find me. Somebody gave me to you. Yeah, a shepherd. Do you know him? Can you describe him? See, who did he say? He was a servant of, let's see, Laius, that's it. Jocasta turns and looks at the guy. Oedipus asks the chorus, anybody know this herdsman that he's talking about? Later, I think he's the shepherd you sent for, actually. Jocasta, Oedipus asks, is the herdsman he's talking about the shepherd that we've sent for? 1157 or so. That man, why ask? Old shepherd, talk, empty nonsense. Don't give it another thought. Don't even think. Notice, why ask? That is, why inquire? Why dig deeper? Don't think about it. You don't know. Don't think. Give up now? With a clue like this? Give up what? Give up the search. Search for what? The truth. The truth. He wants it all revealed. He's going to overturn every stone to find the truth. Give up now with a clue like this? Fail to solve the mystery of my birth? Not for all the world. Stop, Jocasta says. In the name of God, if you love your own life, call off this search. My suffering is enough. What does she mean? She knows exactly who he is. She knows he is her son, who was abandoned at Kithron. She knows her son killed her husband. She knows she had sex with that son many, many times over the years and had at least 4 children with him. My suffering is enough. That is, it's complete. It's full. Oedipus, no. Even if my mother's a slave, I've got to know. I beg you, don't do this. Oedipus, listen to you? No more. I must know it all, must see the truth at last. Please, for your sake, I want the best. She tells Oedipus, you're doomed, 1173. May you never fathom who you are. Fathom, not know. Fathom means what? To plumb the depths. To reach the very depths of understanding. To know everything about himself. And Jocasta runs through the palace doors crying out, "Aye, man of agony. That is the only name I have for you, that no other, ever, ever, ever." And the leader says, "Not good." She went in there and it's all silent. Last time that happened, we saw Eurydice, she killed herself. Oedipus, let it burst. 1183. Whatever will, whatever must, I must know my birth, no matter how common it may be. See, he still doesn't know. He doesn't know, which is why he's got to push. I must see my origins face to face. Well, he already has. She with her woman's pride may well be mortified by my birth. That is, he kind of like points back to Jocasta and says, she's mortified because she might find out I'm a son of a slave. But I count myself the son of chance, the great goddess, giver of all good things. I'll never see myself disgraced. She, chance, is my mother. Well, is chance really the mother of all good things? You know, in the movie I talked about signs. It was pure random chance that Mel Gibson's character's wife was killed by a drunk driver. How many people plan to kill someone while driving drunk? How many people plan to be in front of a drunk driver's car? Total random chance. And the moons have marked me out, my blood brothers. One moon on the wane, the next moon great with power. That is my blood, my nature. I will never betray it. What is his blood, his nature? Never to fail to search and learn my birth. So the shepherd is brought in, and Oedipus tells him to answer all his questions. Line 1235, he asks, where did you do your grazing? The shepherd says, Kithron, etc. And the messenger speaks to him and says, remember me? He says, no, not really. And the messenger says, let me refresh his memory. And he tells him about what he found, about the baby and such. And 1255, tell me you gave me a child back then, a boy. Remember? Shepherd, why rake that up again? Well, this was the boy. 1260. Damn you, shut your mouth. Quiet. The shepherd knows. Okay? Shepherd, he's talking nonsense, wasting his breath. 1265. Oedipus, you won't talk willingly? Then you'll talk with pain. So the guard sees him, they're going to torture him. Shepherd says, what more do you need to know? Line 1270. Did you give him that child? I wish I died that day. Okay? Yes, I gave it to him. Line 1276. Where'd you get it? Your house? Someone else's? I got it from someone. Whose house? Laius, he tells him, 1283 or so. A slaver born of his own blood. Shepherd. Oh no, I'm right at the edge. The horrible truth. I've got to say it. Oedipus. And I'm at the edge of hearing horrors. Yes, but I must hear. Now, what's the edge of hearing horrors that Oedipus is at? He's thinking a slave. He's thinking he's a slave. Okay? I think. Shepherd. All right. His son. 1285 or so. His son. They said it was his son. But the one inside, your wife, she'd tell it best. My wife, she gave it to you? Yes, my king. What for? To kill it. Her own child. How could she? Frightening prophecies. What? They said he'd kill his parents. But you gave him to this old man. Why? I pitied the little baby. Oh God, 1306. Oh God, all come true, all burst to light. Oh light, now let me look my last on you. That is, everything that was hidden, everything that was dark, has now been revealed. I stand revealed at last, cursed in my birth, cursed in marriage, cursed, because now he understands the prophecy. It was true. Okay? Notice, however, the prophecy's been true for a long time. When was the prophecy fulfilled? Years ago. Polynices and Eteocles are already adults at this point. Okay? So, minimum 15 years, probably 18 years. He killed Laius 18, 20 years ago. He's been living, having sex with his mother for 18 years, probably. All that's been fulfilled. What is now new? It's been revealed. He now knows. It's the recognition, and it's the recognition that leads to the total reversal. Because what was Oedipus's position at the beginning of the play? He was the king of Thebes. He was the highest. He was the greatest of men. Chorus. Oh, the generations of men, the dying generations. Okay, generations means, this particular group that began, this particular group that began, this particular group, etc. It also means the propagations of men, the dying propagations. We're all just dying, is the point the chorus is making right here. I often tell my classes, you start dying when? The moment you take your first breath. That's when the hourglass gets turned and the grains of sand start falling. Oh, the generations of men, the dying generations, adding the total of all your lives, I find they come to nothing. What's the chorus saying? What is the meaning of human existence? Zilch, nada, nothing. Pretty bleak. What is the meaning of life? There is none, according to this argument. Does there exist, is there a man on earth who seizes more joy than just a dream, a vision. A dream, it's ephemeral, right? You wake up and you're like, oh, and it's gone. A vision, it's not real. And the vision no sooner dawns than dies, blazing into oblivion. You are my great example. You, your life, your destiny, Oedipus, man of misery, I count no man blessed. You know, it's like the life sucks. No other way to put it. Hobbes, 17th century, political philosopher of England, described human life as poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Poor, nasty, brutish, and short. You might have seen, the bumper sticker, life's a beach. We all like going to the beach. This philosophy changed the vowel in beach. So life's a bitch. And then you die. Period. There's no good. There's nothing lasting. And there's nothing after. I mean, if you understand the Greek system, you die and then you what? You go to Hades. Okay? You talking about Oedipus, you outranged all men. You rose to the pinnacle. And yet what happened? You're where you are now. Line 1330. Is there a man more agonized? So you got to remember, when you're talking about drama, you got the protagonist and the antagonist. The protagonist, the chief character is what it's often described as. Well, what does it really mean? Protos agonistes, first or chief sufferer. It's the person who suffers the most in a tragedy. Okay? The antagonist is the person in opposition to the protagonist. That is the person who sometimes helps bring about the protagonist's suffering. So in this play, you've got multiple antagonists. Creon is an antagonist for Oedipus. Tiresias is an antagonist. Okay? So the messenger comes in from the palace and says, 1356, I tell you, neither the waters of the Danube nor the Nile can wash this palace clean. Whoa. Danube, farthest reach of the north, the known world, so to speak. The Nile, the most important river in the African continent. All the waters of those two rivers, the messenger is saying, are not enough water to wipe the stain clean from this palace. And we kind of thought, the curse on the house of Atreus was bad. Right? Such things it hides, it soon will bring to light. Terrible things, none done blindly now, all done with a will. What are the things? He's not talking about the incest and that kind of stuff. This is talking about the things that have just recently happened inside the palace. The pains we inflict upon ourselves hurt most of all. Well, what are the pains? We're going to find out very shortly. The actual physical pains that Oedipus inflicted upon himself or that Jocasta did. Well, we're going to find out Jocasta kills herself. She went inside, got a sash and hung herself. Oedipus ran in, found her, pulled these brooches off of her cloak, off of her dress, unfolded the pins, and right in his eyes and gouged out his eyes. So that when he comes back out, he's going to come out with a mask on that has all this blood dripping from it, right? The pains we inflict upon ourselves hurt most of all. That's not only talking about physical pain, though. That's talking about emotional, mental, spiritual torment, okay? And some of that is blindly done, unknown. We're doing it unknowingly. Okay? That's why, and none done blindly now, all done with a will. The ones that he's talking about here, these were all intentional. What did Oedipus say a few pages earlier? He said, let it burst, whatever will, whatever must, I must know my birth, no matter. I will never betray it, never fail to search and learn. He's got to pursue. Okay. So we find out the queen is dead. Messenger tells how. We find out what Oedipus did, line 1405 and following. He cries out, you'll see no more the pain I suffered, all the pain I caused. Too long you looked on the ones you never should have seen, blind to the ones you long to see, to know. Blind from this hour on, blind in the darkness, blind. That is, he was blind, Elias. Okay. He longed to see his real parents. He never knew that Merope and Polybus weren't his real parents. And it's kind of implying that there's a search here to know who we really are. And in order to do that, we have to know where we've come from. But he was blind to that reality. Okay. Blind in the darkness, blind. So he gouges his eyes out. And then he comes out, and the leader asked, has he any pain, any rest from pain now? Okay. And the chorus says, as Oedipus comes out, blinded, led by a boy. Oh, the terror, the chorus is speaking. The terror of the suffering for all the world to see. The worst terror that ever met my eyes, what madness swept over you, what God, what dark power leapt beyond all bounds, beyond belief, to crush your wretched life. What dark power, it's almost suggesting like the Furies, okay? Oedipus says, 1448, my destiny, my dark power, what a leap you made. But here, I don't think the dark power is the Furies. I think the dark power is the Greek notion, the Greek idea of the daemon, or daimon, or as it's pronounced in modern English, demon. But it's not the, horns and cloven hoof devil of popular culture. By the daemon, demon, it's that internal driving spirit, driving urge that tells us that drives an individual to be what he or she is meant to be. Okay? And that applies not just to humans, but to everything else. In other words, as an example, it's the thing in an acorn that makes an acorn become become an oak tree. Okay? It's the thing in an apple seed that says you will grow up to be an apple tree, so to speak. Well, it's the same thing that drives people to do what they are, quote unquote, supposed to do. And when people don't do what they're supposed to do, they live lives of desperation. Okay? They are unfulfilled. So my destiny, my dark power, what a leap he made. So what was his destiny? What was that dark power? What was that drive? That drive was to know the truth. Because look at all the times throughout the play, he could have stopped. He could have stopped. Jocasta said, enough. My suffering's enough. And that could have also meant my suffering is enough. Could have also meant my suffering's enough for both of us. Just let's go inside and we'll pretend like nothing's ever happened. And I think that's exactly what Jocasta really meant there. We'll go inside, and even though I know who you are and I know what you've done, you will share my bed with me, meaning we will have sex like we've done in the past, and I will never let anything out. Knowing everything that she knows at that point. Okay? Oedipus, 1450. Dark horror of darkness, my darkness drowning, etc., etc. Chorus comes out. Oedipus speaks to the chorus. Chorus asks in line 1466, what superhuman power drove you on? What drove you to this? Not just to gouging your eyes out, but to reach for this conclusion. Apollo, friends, Apollo, he ordained my agonies. Not true, actually. He knew, he foretold. If anything, it was the fates that foreordained. These my pains on pains, but the hand that struck my eyes was mine, mine alone. That's that synergy. His actions working in tandem with the gods. What good were eyes to me? Nothing I could see could bring me joy. Okay? Look at the bottom of that page, 1481 and 82. The chorus says, pitiful, you suffer so. Pitiful, that is inspiring in us, the chorus and the audience, pity, you suffer so. You understand so much. That is, now you see, you understand, you perceive. I wish you had never known. That's what's meant behind the phrase, ignorance is bliss. That, sometimes it's better just not to know things. But he had to hold to his birth or his nature. He couldn't stop. He couldn't have not known. That's why he answered the riddle of the Sphinx. He knew the answer. Okay? Oedipus talks about the messenger. He saved, 1485, he saved my life for this kindness. What did the shepherd say? I thought he would take you off and you live somewhere else, which is exactly what happened. Notice Oedipus is trying to blame somebody else for what has happened to him. Who is ultimately to blame? Now, Knox kind of says, in terms of the fulfillment of the prophecy, that it's the gods, it's fate and such. Maybe we're looking at it from two sides of the same coin, but I don't think so. It's Oedipus who makes it happen. How does he make it happen? By trying not to make it happen. This is the problem with time travel stuff. That if you go back in time, you'll affect the future, and etc. Well, Oedipus receives word. This is what's going to happen. And it sounds like it's already happened in a sort. Well, according to the fates, think of that screen sharing I had up here. According to the fates, over here, it's already happened. Okay? According to the Boethium View, all of this has already happened. And in the mind of God, or in the eye of God, everything is now. So, yeah, Oedipus was born, he killed his father, he slept with his mother, he gouged his eyes out. It's boom. It's all now. Okay? So Oedipus says, he saved my life for this kindness. He thought this was kindness. Well, you can't blame the shepherd for what happened to Oedipus, 20, 30 years later, right? So, Oedipus says, after all of that, 1495 or so, talking about the grief. What grief can crown this grief? It's mine alone, my destiny. I am Oedipus. It's kind of like, this is what I was made for. Chorus, How can I say you've chosen for the best? Chosen there the blindness. Better to die than be alive and blind. Why? Why better to die than be alive and blind? Because when you're blind, not 21st century, 5th century BC, when you're blind, you're what? You are totally reliant on somebody else. Okay? Oedipus, 1498. What I did was best. Don't lecture me. No more advice. I with my eyes. How could I look my father in the eyes when I go down to death? See, interesting notion that when he dies, the body dies and the soul goes down to death. The soul will be physically blind. Okay? Or mother, so abused, Worst, my children. How could I look at them? Nah, 1511 or 12. I've stripped myself. I gave the command myself. All men must cast away the great blasphemer, the curse now brought to light by the gods, the son of Laius. The curse wasn't brought to light by the gods. The curse was brought to light by Oedipus. Because he wouldn't shut up. He wouldn't stop searching. Okay? And then he says, oddly, well, not oddly, given the end of the play, 1522, oblivion. What a blessing for the mind to dwell a world away from pain. See, what's he implying about oblivion? The soul will be separate from the body, and it's in the body that pain resides. Okay? So he asks the chorus, 1540 and following, hide me somewhere, hurl me into the sea, kick me out of the city. Creon comes in. Creon says, I haven't come to mock you, Oedipus, 1556 and following. He turns to the guards. Have you lost all respect? Take him out of here. He should be hidden. This is obscene. 1566. This is obscene. Why? Because he's the king. And he's out there and he's got blood all streaming down his face. Seen. It shouldn't be seen. See, in an interesting thing, Greek theater. What was called spectacle always occurred off stage, either literally off the stage, that is, off to the side over here, where it couldn't be seen by the audience, or back here in the Scani, in for example, in the palace, right? And what was meant by spectacle was any bloodletting. So stabbing, murder, killing, gouging eyes out, all of that occurred out of view. It was not deemed morally acceptable for that to occur within sight of the audience. So that's what, Creon, get him out of here. Get him out of the sight of the sun even, So Oedipus says, drive me out of the land. Creon, I would have done that already. 1575, first I wanted the god to clarify my duties. What, the god really? His command was clear. Creon says, it's better to ask precisely what to do. Now notice this Creon portrayed here with the Creon we get in Antigone. Now, Antigone was written 11, 12 years before this play, but chronologically in the world of the plays, this is a much younger Creon. And what's he saying? I'm not going to do anything without getting the will of the gods first. This is kind of, in one sense, you can almost look at it as, if Oedipus, when he'd come across that crossroads, if he had stopped, fallen down on his knees and prayed, should I kill these people or not, But what did he do? They told him to move. He wouldn't. He was stubborn. And so he kills them for not moving over. Road rage, anyone? Okay. So Creon says, I assume you're going to obey the god's decrees this time? You got the prophecy, and what did you try to do? You tried to say no. You gods don't control me. You know, your introduction talks about man as the measure of all things. Well, Creon's essentially saying here, no, you're not. They're in control. Oedipus, yes, I will, okay? But he goes on and says, nothing can destroy me, 1594. Nothing can. I would never have been saved from death. I've been saved for something great and terrible, something strange. What is that? Well, that's what comes in the next play. That's his apotheosis, where Oedipus is blessed and raised by the gods to the level of the gods because of his suffering, because he has suffered so much. He's made godlike, okay? But he does ask for help for his two girls, okay? And Antigone and Ismene are brought out. Oedipus thanks Creon and such. He talks to the girls. He tells them, you know, horrible life they're going to have. 1663. Creon said, it's time enough, into the palace. 1664, sorry. In response to Oedipus's, I must, but I find it very difficult. I find it very hard. Time is the great healer. You will see. You know, and we still have that phrase, time heals all wounds. If enough time goes by, those wounds scar over and they no longer bother us. Okay? He tells Creon, drive me out of Thebes and exile Creon. Not me. Only the gods do that. Okay? But Creon agrees. He holds on to his daughters. As the guards pull the daughters loose, take them through the palace doors, 1675, Creon says, still the king, master of all things, still having to be in control, no more. Here, your power ends. None of your power follows you through life. Well, what's his power really? His pride, his arrogance, his I can do it all, his I have all the answers, his I'm the smartest man alive, his stubbornness. What's Oedipus have to learn? What do all tragic heroes ultimately have to learn? Humility. That that they're not the end all and be all. So the chorus gets, as in all Greek tragedies, the chorus gets the finest word. I want you to look at this and compare it with the final word also of the chorus in Antigone. So here's the chorus. We're almost done. People of Thebes, my countrymen, look on Oedipus. And it's almost like they say, Oedipus, would you come back out here? Just kind of stand there for everybody. I mean, not literally, but metaphorically. Look at Oedipus. That is, Oedipus is your example. Not an example necessarily to be followed, okay? He is your example of what not to do. He solved the famous riddle with his brilliance. He rose to power, a man beyond all power. Who could behold his greatness without envy? Now what a black sea of terror has overwhelmed him. Who could look on him without envy? That is, who would look at Oedipus when he was at the height of his power and say, boy, it'd be nice to be like Oedipus. Look where he ends. Now, as we keep our watch and wait the final day, keep our watch, military term, as we stand alert on our metaphorical walls around our lives, around our homes, etc., and keep watch for the enemy out there and wait the final day, death, count no man happy till he dies. free of pain at last. Count no man happy till he dies, free of pain at last. Another translation reads, count no man blessed until he dies, free of pain at last. What's the chorus saying? Life is pain, and then you die. Period. Okay? Look at the end of Antigone. Wisdom is by far the greatest part of joy, and reverence towards the gods must be safeguarded. The mighty words of the proud, Creon in the play Antigone, and Antigone are paid in full with mighty blows of fate. Okay? Why the mighty blows? Because fate has to beat the proud down, has to make them submit, has to humble them. And at long last, these blows will teach us wisdom. And what's the wisdom? To not think too much of ourselves, to not think too highly of ourselves. And what's the wisdom at the end of Oedipus? Don't expect joy in life. Don't expect life to be happy. Compare that with the 21st century America. What does almost everything in our society tell us? That we ought to be happy, that being happy is a right. I mean, Thomas Jefferson put it in the Declaration of Independence, that we have a God-given right to the pursuit of happiness. Notice, it's not the right of happiness, it's to pursue it. Doesn't mean that we will attain it. And I'll just throw this out there. I think he's totally wrong, by the way. I don't think there's anything in the history of humanity, in the Christian religion or in any religion, that ultimately says we have a right to pursue happiness. Okay? We have, I won't go there. Okay? So count no man happy till he dies, free of pain at last. What does that say about human life? What do these two plays, combined with the Oresteia, say about the value of human life, the meaning of human life? I mean, when you can just take a baby and throw it off on a hillside, not a lot. There's human life doesn't mean much. And we will stop there. Yeah, I'll send an email.